What's up, guys and gals? Brian Tong here, and this is the iPad Pro 3rd generation. This is my review. You know, I've had about 5 days of time with it, so there's a lot of things that have kind of come up that I really like, things that maybe I don't like as much, but we're gonna get to the bottom of this and really answer the question for you all: can this actually replace your computer? And you're talking to someone who really uses this, you know, as a main media consumption device. I've been a fan of the iPad Pro from the very start, so I'm always on the go, so I use this for watching movies, reading digital magazines, and especially digital comic books. This is my main media consumption device. You know, the other things that I do on this, mostly just email and maybe some notes, but nothing really big when it comes to heavy lifting. Now, this device is kind of going to be used differently by different people. That's how I use it. If you're a digital artist, you know, for someone like me, I've probably busted out the Apple Pencil maybe 10 times tops. And so I'm not that person who's constantly sketching or using this necessarily as a real, like, true artist pad. But again, you might be that person, and that's why this device is so unique. It kind of serves different purposes for different people. So let's talk about the first thing that I just loved about this. Right when I got it out of the box, it has to be the design. We're talking about a 5.9 millimeter slate piece of glass tablet from Apple. It has the, you know, the hard flat edges. They kind of went away from those rounded, curved consumer designs that they have in the past. This definitely kind of feels like that quality industrial design. It's light to the touch. It doesn't feel heavy or bulky at all. And it's a big improvement. You're talking about, look, I'm a 12.9 inch screen guy, and the reason why is because I want the most screen real estate as possible. But what makes this really cool is that this is basically about the size of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And you're getting all that screen, so it's as compact as you can really get. The bezels are pretty thin around the edges. We know that on like something like the 10.5 inch iPad Pro from previous generations, it does get slightly thinner, but when you look at this, the symmetry of it all, it's just a beautiful piece of hardware. So Apple, on that design-wise, you did good. Like, this is a great, gorgeous device. Let's also talk about another feature that's special to me, the 120 hertz refresh rate. If you've never used a device like that has that, you won't really understand, but everything is buttery smooth when you're talking about navigating the menus, scrolling up and down when you're reading websites, reading your emails. It makes a difference. It is so nice to see, and when you don't have it, it's kind of like, ugh, it's honestly hard to go back. It also contributes to the Apple Pencil, right? This higher refresh rate makes the responsiveness on this Apple Pencil better as well. So everyone that was asking for like an OLED display, I didn't want an OLED display on the iPad Pro, because if you did that, you take away some of the core features that makes it special. So I'm glad they stuck with the LCD display on this design. And also, I think if you're someone who has loved the iPad or has an older iPad from the start, we know there's plenty of you that maybe only bought one iPad and you've been using the same one. If you think it's time to upgrade, this is going to be a great upgrade for you. It's like, it definitely feels like it is the next step and the next generation for this device, and it's pretty darn polished, at least from a hardware side. The other thing that we want to talk about, it's kind of more of a complementary piece of the puzzle. We're talking about the Apple Pencil here, and this thing, I mean, this has probably made some of the biggest improvements. You have this like really nice matte surface on it, so it's easier to hold, it's easier to grip, it feels really comfortable in your fingers. Also, it has this flat edge, and you can, you know, while you're using it, you can double tap to switch between the sketching tool you're using versus erasing. So I really love that as well. The other thing about this as well, right? Put this down. It is obviously magnetic. It charges the Apple Pencil at the same time. So finally, right, you can hang out. You don't have to have your Apple Pencil like in your pocket or in a bag flinging around. Like, I lost an Apple Pencil specifically because I just couldn't attach it to the iPad at all times. So that's kind of another big feature. They really did good on making huge improvements on this. The latency between, you know, sketching and drawing versus the screen, it's still around 20 milliseconds. We haven't seen any kind of major improvement there, but it's still a great tool. Oh, and one little fun fact, because it's magnetic, if you have like a all metal table, if you're someone of those people that has like one of those fancy schmancy ones, it sticks to your table too. You won't lose it like that. That's pretty cool. All right, the other thing that is really special about this is its speed. Now, Apple popped this new A12X processor inside, and the latest benchmarks pretty much show it's around like almost twice as fast as the previous generation iPad Pro. The thing about it, though, is I've been using it for about 5 days right now. You don't really feel that speed because navigating through it, playing around, moving through the menus and using the iPad, I feel like I use it exactly the same way. I know that it's significantly faster, but I don't feel like it's significantly faster until Apple really unleashes the power inside of here that comes down to iOS and the apps. And that's something that, I guess I can wait for, but you kind of have this familiar story where everything, the hardware feels great, but iOS is still holding back the iPad Pro. If you look at reviews from 3 years ago, it's kind of the same thing they said. Is it ready for a primetime laptop? Well, we'll dig into more of that. I think from that point, let's talk about some of the things that maybe I don't really like about this. And I think the number one thing that's kind of stands out as a bugaboo for me is kind of the redesign of the home button. It's not a like end all be all. It's not going to stop me from getting this device. I do love it, but there's kind of some caveats where you have this, right? When you're using an iPhone, you can just take your thumb, it's in place, and just swipe from the bottom and it unlocks it. Now with the iPad, it's a little different. So let's say like here, I unlock it, right? You got to go down the bottom and swipe up. Now, many of you, of course, you have to use Face ID. So there you go. Now it did it. But you have it in certain situations where I'm used to using the iPad like on the side. And when I used to hold it like just horizontally, your thumb is in place. You actually just press right here with Touch ID and it unlocks it. Again, I do like the design. I love this product, but now I'm using this horizontally. I have to like take my hand off of the side, go to the bottom and drag up. And so it kind of feels like an extra step where I'm normally just here, unlock it, use it, double tap it for Touch ID or whatever. You don't get that luxury anymore, so it's an extra step. Not the end of the world, first world problems, but I think you'll feel the usability takes a little more time to getting used to, and I'm honestly still getting used to it. Another design change that does affect kind of how I use this is the fact that, right, up here on the top, they put the True Depth camera in here for Face ID, which is cool. There's a really small bezel around the edge. But let's say you're holding this again sideways, and there's times where like, look, we're holding it like with our thumbs on it on the side. There's been plenty of times where it actually says the Face ID is being blocked, the camera's being blocked, is because I'm holding it how I like naturally hold it. And so it's kind of weird to think that I need to train my brain to hold it lower, kind of like below the True Depth camera with my thumbs so it won't block it, so it'll unlock my iPad Pro. That was another thing that was kind of cumbersome to me. It's like, like I love the tech here, I love the design, but I'm still trying to like get used to literally holding it differently. And of course, they took away the headphone jack. It's a USB-C port now. We already know this, and you're either gonna love it or hate it. I'm not here to talk about that, but the biggest issue right now for the next year or so is that I have 3 different chargers and 3 different connections for my iPhone, Apple Watch, and new iPad Pro. That's unless I invest in a USB-C charger and then get all the different USB-C cable versions for my devices. And my backup, it's normally on my iMac that only has the standard USB connection. So I went out of my way to use a USB-C to Lightning connector to back up my old iPad Pro to my new laptop. And then I had to go USB-C to USB-C to finally restore the new iPad Pro. And I don't use iCloud. I'm not the only one, so this is what I had to do. And I get it, this is a timing thing with all these connections and this transition to USB-C, but I don't like it, and right now it's a real hassle. And finally, you know what I'm gonna talk about? The biggest thing that is holding back the iPad Pro from reaching its full potential is really iOS. And this is something that I've said from the very beginning, 3 years ago, hoping that would change. And Apple has made some strides. Like last year, they brought something like split screen functionality. That's nice. It allows you to do a little bit more multitasking. You can drag and drop things between it. But in iOS 12, they'd added no new features to software whatsoever. And that, to me, was a kind of a bummer. We didn't get any major pro apps from Apple. And that has always been the thing. Like if you're gonna always say, look, it's a computer, this can replace your computer, why do you think so many reviewers like us are comparing this to a computer? It's because Apple has been telling us it's a computer, but then for most users, it's not, it won't do what a computer does. It has a Files app that you can get stuff from the iCloud drive, from your Google Drive, from your Dropbox, but I can't connect a storage, look at it, navigate it, edit those files, and put it back on there. And Apple doesn't want us to do that, but if they don't want us to do that, then I'd say like maybe they should back off on trying to call this a computer. If you're someone who's web browsing, emailing, notes, maybe some little light photo editing, I think this absolutely can replace your computer. And there's a lot of people out there. But if you're doing anything else that requires just a little bit of tweaking, this will not replace your computer. Even if I was just someone who's word processing, spreadsheets, I don't want to dink around with my fingers and a keyboard. This is going to be really, I treat this really as a luxury device. I still love it. It can be a computer for most people, but for me, it's not. And I'm also not like a digital artist. I think that even as a creative person, you can be that, but if it comes to video editing, you can't do that. When Photoshop comes into play in 2019, maybe that's when I'll really use this much more than I ever have. That's what I'm looking forward to, but that's the promise Apple has given us, and that's something that I want to do. It's just not there yet. So when you consider all those things, like the things that I love about this, and I know the limitations of this iPad Pro, but I honestly do love it because it is like my partner in crime when I travel, and it has a very specific use for me. Even though I do feel like it's kind of like a luxury for me, I still love it a lot. Now, the biggest things they can do right here, obviously, unleash the power of iOS. We need a hybrid OS if they really want to untap that potential, and we need more Pro apps. We're going to start seeing them trickle out in 2019, but until that happens, this is still like a device that feels limited to me. And also when you talk about the price, I'm not the type of person that's going to say, oh, I'm never going to tell someone how to spend their money. Is $999 starting price for a 12.9-inch iPad higher than before? I mean, if you talk about the 2015, the first iPad Pro, it started at around $799. Technology has advanced, so it's not like, oh, it should only be like $50 more, but $999 starting off might turn off some people. Again, I'm not telling you how to spend your money, but if it's worth it for you, it's worth it for you, and you're gonna spend the cheddar. So what is the final verdict for this? You know, we've talked about all the pros and cons, and you know the perspective that I come from. I love the iPad Pro. This is really like the ultimate travel buddy for me, but more than that, it's like my main media consumption device. The form factor is great. If you've owned an iPad Pro before, you're gonna love the design, you're gonna love the speed spec bumps. It's just like a great upgrade overall, but then also, right, if you understand the limitations, this could still be the device for you. Could it replace your actual computer? It actually might. Now, for me, it doesn't, but I think if you understand what it can and can't do going in, it could still be a great device for you. And honestly, this is the iPad Pro for me.